I learned music through old hymns while people were grieving. So there's a bit of melancholy mood in my own songs, and arguably this record is a bit more celebration and singing. And like I say, a lot of great country music is rooted in gospel foundation, and this is just adding to that culture, I think.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stephen McLean, the creative director for Barn 49. I recently spoke to William Prince about Gratitude, Manitoba legend Fred Penner, and of course, his new album, Gospel First Nation. You're promoting this new album, which I listened to. I love it. Very comforting. Like, I know you've talked about these songs being comforting. I found them very comforting. It's a weird time right now for everybody. So why was it important for you to put out this album now? Because I know you just put out an album not that long ago.
I think this record was the appropriate thing to say. I was thinking about what needs to be said right now. Gospel is by definition the good news. I think more than ever during this shift in our joined realities that we need some good news. We're dealing with a lot of difficult things right now. There's a virus that has caused the great humbling of 2020. I was very much drawn to speak on the history, my First Nations history, when talking in solidarity with those at the focal point of the Black Lives Matter movement. There's a lot going on in a polarized North America. The systemic problems within the North American justice system, these things happen in the same, in a degree to First Nations people in this country, and there's kind of a quick national pride in being Canadian as an open, welcoming space to culture and people when, sadly, I'm trying to open a dialogue about how the history of it is actually, built upon the eradication of First Nations people, my family, the people that are detailed in this record. And this goes back to old gospel music, the first songs that I ever learned to sing. And this is my dad doing his best versions of Charlie Pride singing gospel and Johnny Cash. And these songs are akin to where you would be in life when you finally wrote Sunday Morning Coming Down and Jesus Was a Capricorn, these great Christofferson tracks. So for those who like Luther Perkins and, the Tennessee 2 and 3 and all that kind of arrangement of things, I was kind of feeling this nostalgic pull of playing music that reminded me of that era and time. And gospel was the thing that fit the mold while also being appropriate for what we're living through right now.
I'm a Charlie Pride fan, but I'd never heard of All My Children before. So thanks for
All,
introducing me to that.
yeah, all his children,
Yeah.
a great
Also, I'm sorry.
song,
Yeah.
just coming up on 50 years old and one of his great accomplishments, a list of songs that Charlie Pride has done that are great, but that one always stuck in my mind. It's also special too because I was on a flight watching this feature documentary on him and how back in his time he would have been heard, voice first before these people would walk into an auditorium and be greeted by this black gentleman who would then blow them away with one of the most defining and memorable voices in the history of country music, and how myself I've experienced people almost in this lighthearted, well-intending way that wow, we've never heard a First Nations man sing like you, and that's an interesting parallel to have there. And so the fact that my dad and I, while he was alive, I got to see Charlie Pride in concert too. It really makes it special to have one of my dad's favorite cuts on this record.
That's an interesting point too, right? Because I'm guessing that there's a lot of people, um, like who had only ever heard an artist before, especially kind of in 50s, 60s era when television wasn't that mainstream yet. Most people were consuming content through radio.
Yeah, and it's different now where a lot of image is presented up front before you hear any music. Look at this new artist, look at their aura, their being, and that will draw you in to maybe hear the music. So it's different now. The kind of the inverse in different ways, depending on how you look at it, I suppose. And this record is something I wanted to speak of while people were listening to me and excited to hear the songs. It's got three original compositions on it. 2020. Who's making original kind of old timey gospel right now? And I just thought it reminded me of the times when my family'd be asked to sing at wakes and funerals. That's kind of the presence going on. There's a bit of grief happening right now with a loss of the normalcy we were used to. And so I've seen these songs lift spirits in the darkest of times. And I think I'm just adding to a cloth of other greats, before me who put that framework out there, like Charlie Pride. And, Johnny Cash sang Folsom Prison, but he also sang his mother's hymn book. And this shouldn't be anything new. I've spoken quite freely on the idea of faith. And, my faith is rooted in uh, acceptance for all people, respect, the seven sacred teachings of Aboriginal law, and these are great things to live by. And yeah, it's less an album of Christ and obedience, but talking to the Jesus that would have been taking care of people at the Main Street Project, and helping those around us that are vulnerable. So,
That's really
any,
cool. Did you ever watch the show Silicon Valley?
I have not, no.
Oh, okay. So it's about, the tech world and tech industry, and there's they go to a pitch meeting, and one of the characters um is gay, but he's also a Christian. And so when they go to the pitch meeting, his friend is like, whatever you do, don't tell him about your thing. And the guy was like, wow, he's like, I can talk about being gay. And he's like, no, talk about being gay, 100%. Don't talk about being a Christian. It's going to weird people out. And we
Yeah,
live in this world now where if you talk about Jesus, people gonna give you a sideways look. Um, and so
yeah,
for
and
you to put
that's
out this album now in this climate we're in, it's kind of a brave move to talk about Jesus, to talk about Christianity, to talk about these things, because they're kind of counterculture in a way now.
yeah, definitely from a different time. It was more capturing a bit of the geographical sound imprint. These are songs coming from northern communities and reserves with primarily First Nations people, and the other part is that Christianity itself and gospel music were the tools used for colonization and assimilation of people, and forming, like I say, that obedience to a doctrine of sorts. So this is interesting in the fact that it's First Nations people in cowboy hats singing about Jesus in a sense, to if you want to reduce it in any way. But I think it's just an expansion on where the foundations of my own songs come from, rooted in music, much like how Hank Williams would have formed his own songs based in old gospel. And the thing to remember that this is an authentic take with real people and me interpreting a story the best that I can from memory. It's a feeling, a nostalgia. I learned music through old hymns while people were grieving. So there's a bit of melancholy mood in my own songs, and arguably this record is a bit more celebration and singing. And like I say, a lot of great country music is rooted in gospel foundation, and this is just adding to that culture, I think.
You always struck me as a guy who likes to dabble in different genres. You'll do some folk stuff, you'll do some country stuff, you'll do now some gospel stuff. Um, did growing up in Winnipeg, which is kind of in Manitoba, which is a real hub of amazing musicians from a variety of different genres, influence that?
Oh, I'm so proud of the Winnipeg community. Winnipeg is the gateway to the West, and here we have home to the Times Changed High and Lonesome Club, which brings about the greatest acts in North America, and especially in Canadiana, North Americana, whatever you want to call it. And there's a great community here where we inspire and encourage each other, and I'm proud to be a part of that. And the greats, I'm happy to always work with my collaborating friend and partner Scott Nolan, and I have a really great thing going on here in Winnipeg at the Song Shop and Jamie Sitar, and I think as long as I stay focused in that, the music will keep progressing in its natural way. But being here, you can't help but always want to elevate yourself and change. Like just listening to Begonia this morning and these other great, incredible acts from Winnipeg, playlisting things like I'm always taken by the Micah Ehrenbergs and the Richard Inmans of this town and great talent that I encourage everyone to seek out if you're inspired by songwriters. These are, great songwriters from Winnipeg.
And one of the greatest musicians from Winnipeg, um, um, I think, is Fred Penner. Do you have a favorite Fred Penner song?
Oh, I was just talking to Fred the other morning, and we were sharing things on gratitude again about just watching. I have the great pleasure of, if there's one person I see in the airport more than anybody, it's probably Fred Penner, because oftentimes in the summers we're crossing paths and playing some of the same festivals. So Fred's always been an inspiring figure around here. You can't, the Sandwiches song my son likes to sing, and he's definitely part of some of the best Manitoba culture and stuff. Crawling through the log, man. Who hasn't wished to do that? I have friends that got to be on that show. So Fred's a gem and a huge part of the Winnipeg community.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about, working with big producers. You know, you didn't mention Dave Cobb. He's cut a ton of amazing records. How many times now have you gone down to Nashville to work with him and other producers?
Oh, I'd say that Dave was kind of my introduction to Nashville, and I'm so thankful I got to start there. Like, you think of RCA and like Studio B into Studio A, and just like the preservation that that building has gone under, and Dave taking that building, under his wing to keep it alive and leave things as is and just keep making great music. We did a recut of Breathless together when Glassnote decided to put out Earthly Days again and kind of reintroduce that record to America. And that was my first kind of trip down there. And then we spent the reliever sessions together, just getting to know each other. And Dave is such a humble man in his accomplishment. He's just he's a music lover, I say. He grew up. He told me an only child, and so he got great at instruments and loves the Beatles, and that's a great sensibility to have. Just an appreciator of song and music, and that's the best part. If you can make music with music lovers, people that appreciate songs, like it'll steer your songs the right way. And I'm happy that on both sides of the border to have a friend and you know a place to go. Knowing Dave and working with him, he's done such great stuff with the Reliever record and the Spark. Being a part of SOCAN Songwriting Prize, I owe a lot of that to him as well. And here in Canada as well, Scott Nolan just being, bringing two worlds together and making that record sound as one whole piece was a really great experience.
I started listening to your music before I had kids, and now that I have kids, some of the lyrics hit a little differently. Like before I had kids, I understood them, but now that I have kids, I get them. Like with
Sure.
one of the lyrics, I want to live to the second last day that my children
Children
do.
do. Yeah.
That's a super like that. That's a pretty heavy thing, right? Because you want to see your kids, do all the things they're going to do. And I know one of the things you said was that you wish your dad was able to listen to this record. Why do you feel that way?
Oh, this record is all encompassing of a very special bond we had. I grew up in this music with him. I was the one carrying the amps in and tuning the guitars before the service and stuff while he would get his message ready or uh, tend to other things and greeting people. Because oftentimes he would speak and give a bit of word with stuff to lead service. The responsibility would fall on a number of different families, and when it was us, he took it very seriously, and so I took care of the music. I just handled setting up those things, and he would have loved to hear it because I think this is a record he was hoping to make. You know, he made 3 albums over the course of his life and taught me so much. He taught me a lot about how not to make records too, and from that it was born this effort with a great band and all of us in unison and harmony. There's backup singing this time around, and again highlighting some of these great country songs that I grew up around and enjoy so much. So he would have been blown away by this one. You know, he was my biggest supporter, and just like my mom. And I'm quick to praise him because he's passed, but you know, one of the best things about my dad was my mom, and she's a huge part of that too. And I'm still just very much in this realm of family. People are going to get so bored of me talking about family and gratitude all the time, but that's the secret to it all. Like everything that's happened in my time has just been kind of putting things out there, tithing in a sense. That's an interesting concept we can tie into this record. Is this record is a bit of tithing for me, I guess, giving back to the universe and, like I say, removing myself from the song a little bit and using a talent that I have, not boastfully. I don't think we needed another love song right now. You know, the what I wanted to say had to be appropriate, and like say, the time we're in calls for the good news, and these songs make me feel good. I
Yeah,
just
man. They make me
when I
feel good
don't
too.
when I don't know what else to sing, and sometimes warming up before a show on the road, I'd still break out into a chorus of one of these old favorites and warm up and sing differently, I guess. And
Yeah.
so I hope
Well, it
people
almost, yeah,
aren't scared away. Yeah,
yeah.
don't be, take this as a historical recording and view it as a page in a story that I'm hoping to tell for a very long time.
There's real power in nostalgia. I mean, Hollywood's done a great job of it. I mean, they're bringing back stuff from the 80s every other month, it seems like. And I don't know if that's because we feel like things are so chaotic right now, that people are searching for some kind of solace in nostalgia.
Well, that
um
is a great feeling to tap into. You know, what I found also, I was thinking about, like my friend Coulter just put out a record. Coulter Wall is always, speaking on his Saskatchewan history. He's very proud of that, and I think of Western Swing and Waltz's the new record he put out is tying into a deeper history of ranchmen and working with cattle, and like I'm fascinated by that. I love reading about other people's histories, and we think of the new Sturgill Simpson record, Cutting Grass is going to his kind of Kentucky bluegrass roots, and of course Tyler Childers with the traditional fiddle album and only one song with words, learning the fiddle in a way to preserve something. Because if I don't document the Northern First Nations country gospel sound, all the people I grew up learning this music with have passed on, and the families, that have made records over time, I hope they're out there documented somewhere. But this is a way for me to kind of capture that for the museum one day, in a sense that, First Nations people, though having a complicated history with Christianity and its, motives and whatever else, I'm trying to extract some of the good from that, and that's the joy that this music brought to my family and I, and what it's led to in my own career and life, teaching me framework for song, time, rhythm, all those things. So there's a lot of good to be had here too, and let's make this an ongoing conversation. And I've had some affirmation from other First Nations people who grew up the same and do feel a pride in that community. We're missing fellowship right now, connection with others, fellowship. So that's what this record is hopefully going to do, make us feel joined together.
I totally agree with that insight, with what you and some of these other artists are doing right now. And there's also, you're also reaching a new audience too, right? Because there are people coming up who are going to hear these songs for the first time. And that's a pretty cool thing too, right? Because not a lot of big labels and are making this kind of music anymore.
Yeah, when it was where everything started, you think of that tradition too. Maybe it was hanging out in RCA that helped, thinking of that older sound.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, I mentioned Luther Perkins and how, you know, Scott and I were talking about my kind of aspirations were beginning with being a lead guitar player. So I used to play a lot of like blues slide lick, kind of country licks and different things over my dad's rhythm playing. And that was my job. And it was kind of obnoxious from 14 to 16 when I was really learning the fundamentals. And so I wanted to kind of capture this record in a way that it's nothing that I couldn't play, you know, or learn or put on there, keep it authentic because often the band in the country church would end up with six rhythm guitar players, a bass player, a keyboard, no drums. And so um, maybe that's why drums are unfamiliar territory for me sometimes. And it was nice to have great percussion and Christian Degas, Julian Bradford, and Kevin McLean, Alicia Grace, and Patty Kusterock, Eric Lemoyne, everybody that put their time into this album and did such a great job. Like I'm really supported by a sensitive and knowledgeable cast of people, sensible, I should say, and also sensitive. And that itself has helped the music sing. And that's why this is one of my greatest captures. I think it's terrific in what we're preserving here. It's something bigger than us. It's something bigger than ego and song. It's just this is historical and for a different time. I'll be happy I did this and while people were listening, and I hope they continue to listen forever because this is an important bridge to the next record I have planned. And I like that we can kind of cleanse ourselves with a bit of gospel music coming out of this very introspective year. 2020 has been a challenge to a lot. And
I know that you had a, a tour of Europe planned for 2020. You know, you're going to be with Yola. Was that correct?
I did that tour.
You
Yeah,
did that
just
tour.
for the
Sorry, this was the one after that
yeah.
tour. That
So
was canceled.
the Yola tour was great, and it led to a quicker follow up in bigger venues to come back and play. So that tour has been rescheduled to March. So there's dates set up for that for the reschedule. All the dates I had have been rescheduled in some form. People can contact the venues, and answers are never really that far. Six shooters always on top of these things. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing. So we're hopeful. You know, I'm fortunate to be safe at home and that I can stay out of the way and just be diligent in my responsibility of I'm not missing clubs and restaurants and stuff. You know, I ate every meal in a restaurant for the last 3.5, 4 years. So home cooking's been good. My son learned to ride a bike this year. I made a record. I'm writing healthy and I'm getting healthy, feeling stronger. More songs are coming. So 2020, by all means, not the worst year of my life.
When I was growing up in Flin Flon, I went to a Pentecostal church in town,
Yeah.
and I vividly remember to this day, like 30 years later, people speaking in tongues, and it freaked
Yeah.
me out as a kid, right? Because I
Sure.
didn't know what was going on.
Mhm.
For you, spending all this time at churches all over the place, what are some of your more vivid memories?
Oh, like I say, the fellowship was always the best. Those kind of memories, that thing became quite normal. You know, it was all when you're used to that stuff, it becomes easy to celebrate in a way. Like you got to think of, imagine a person that deals with pretty mundane surroundings in a day-to-day smaller country life. Small only in the means that it's like not a lot of change, and so these older folks who are oftentimes great subscribers to the habits of the world. You know, back when I was in the world, that's what old timers say about, uh, you know, living in a sinful life. Back when I was drinking and being a young person, essentially, and before I found Jesus and changed my life and live this way, I used to party. I used to be a real person and do all this stuff. And so it's nice to see those old people fired up and, you know, at 60 years old in church and letting loose because, you know, a feeling sweeps over the room when you're playing just the right amount of songs and the volume's just at that perfect hum and the right message is delivered and it inspires people. And that's like the whole purpose of that belief is to feel some relief in your belief, I guess, from time to time. And like I say, it's an intense thing to witness, but when you realize that it's coming from a place of just uncontrollable joy pouring out. People get the idea of the televangelist, people falling down in the aisles and such, and that can add, of course, a touch of comedy to things. If you look at that out of context, I know how these things can appear, but there's beautiful spirit in it when it's genuine. And sometimes my dad was a very quiet, reserved man, so he was, not the type to get that way and shout and jump and roll on the ground. So all he would say to me that that has stuck with me my whole life about anything. When someone's loud or there's a tension drawn or whatever, just kind of put your hand to it and say, let it be genuine. That's all the responsibility we need to carry. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about judging others for how they may be or, acting and such, because our responsibility falls on just being as best a person as we can be each and every day. And with that simple act, you can relieve yourself of so much extra worry. Why is that person doing that? That's silly. All these negative judgments that ultimately lead to attracting negative things to you. You could bypass all of that by just saying, let it be genuine.
What you've done with Gospel First Nation feels genuine. It's going to resonate with fans. I think you're going to get new fans. And I don't want to take up more of your time. I just wanted to say thanks for talking to me today. It was a pleasure.
Oh, absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thanks to everybody, working to put these things together, taking a shot on Gospel First Nation, and thank you for listening, everybody tuned into this.